I would like to welcome our colleagues from the Select Committee on Rail for joining us today. Thank you very much for joining us. So today's hearing is an oversight hearing to review the California High-Speed Rail Authority's 2016 draft business plan. The authority is required to submit the plan every 2 years. Among other, Among other things, the plan is to include an updated schedule and cost estimate, updated financial scenarios, and a discussion of all reasonable, foreseeable risks. With the release of the draft plan, the authority signaled its intent to shift from a southern-oriented initial operating segment to a northerly IOS from San Jose to North Bakersfield. And for the first time, the draft plan sets forth a fiscally constrained financial outlook for the initial operating segment and for other early investments. Members, let's be frank. The voters approved Proposition 1A, and Governor Brown has thrown his full support behind this daunting task. To build and operate a high-speed rail system under very prescriptive design restrictions set forth in the bond measure, including without public subsidy, and to build the initial segment within very tight timeframes required for the use of federal dollars, to complete environmental reviews within a very litigious atmosphere, and to clear some very real, very intimidating engineering challenges. As the funding partner in this effort, we, the legislature, share responsibility with the governor for assigning this task to the authority. And we, like the governor, must work diligently to ensure the authority's success, including providing appropriate oversight of this project. In part, what today's hearing is all about is taking a look at the status of this project. But that's only a part of what today's hearing is about. The other purpose of today's hearing is to discuss fully what will be expected from us, the legislature, if this project is to proceed. Members, I've toured the high-speed rail construction route last week. I saw firsthand how the project is putting people to work. It's impressive. The authority has had to overcome huge hurdles and get this far, and I commend them. This project really does have the opportunity to be a lifeline and a field of dreams for the Central Valley. But it won't be easy, and it definitely will not be cheap. In the draft business plan, the authority sets forth a financial plan that calls for $20.8 billion to complete the IOS from San Jose to north of Bakersfield, not to Bakersfield. $2.9 billion to extend the IOS to downtown Bakersfield and North San Francisco, and the pursuit of $4 billion for early investment in the Burbank to Anaheim corridor. Members, we could easily spend several days of hearings combing through this draft business plan and the challenging ridership assumptions and examining operating and maintenance expectations and questioning cost and schedule estimates. But I don't think you have that many sleeping bags. Frankly, I don't expect that this will be the time well spent on this component of the plan. Past experience has shown us that when the legislature delves into this level of detail, the discussion turns into a he said, she said brawl, pitting one expert against another, and in the end, very little is actually gained. Instead, today we're going to laser focus on the financial scenario set forth in the business plan for 3 segments: the IOS, the extensions into San Francisco and Bakersfield, and the Southern California early investments. Members, we have to go into this with our eyes wide open. We will hear today from Dan Richard, Chair of the Board of Directors for the Authority, and Jeff Morales, the Executive Director. And we've asked them to provide us, in their presentation, a brief overview of the business plan. We have also asked them to then walk us through clearly and direct the financial plan. Again, we're going into this eyes wide open as the authority's funding partner. We've asked them to explain to us the assumptions and the risk involved in the financing. Then we'll hear from Secretary Brian Kelly from the California State Department of Transportation. And Mr. Kelly ultimately, who has the responsibility for the authority, he also has the responsibility for the rest of the state's transportation programs. That's a big share of everything transportation, Mr. Kelly. Yes, you have big shoulders. And we've asked Mr. Kelly to share with us how the administration intends to draw from these other programs to support high-speed rail. Given the level of importance of the high-speed rail project, it is understandable that the state would want to align its resources to ensure its success. But again, in the spirit of eyes wide open, members, just help us understand fully the impact to these other programs. Well, then, we're going to hear from the Legislative Analyst's Office and from Lou Thompson, the chair of our high-speed rail peer review group, whose work we should be very grateful for. These private citizens are putting their years of expertise into helping us govern the monumental project, and we owe them a great deal of gratitude. Finally, we'll hear from representatives of our regional partners, without whom high-speed rail simply couldn't work. The shift north represents a big, big change in expectations. We've asked our panelists, Hassan Ikrada with SCAG and Jim Harnett from Caltrain, to update those on that. The progress of the existing MOUs with the authority, the implications of going north with the iOS, and the impact to other transportation systems if they have to now compete with high-speed rail for grants from existing state and federal programs. Members, in these presentations, you will hear today about some of the major assumptions you are going to be asked to vote on to move this project forward, like extending cap and trade beyond 2020. You will hear about some not-so-easy conditions that we'll need to provide to cap and trade funds so that they can be bonded against, like pledging the full faith and credit of the state of California to this effort. And you'll hear about how the administration expects to support high-speed rail by drawing on other existing programs that support transit and intercity rail as the new federal freight program. Hopefully, you'll also hear about the tremendous opportunities that high-speed rail promises, some of which I saw firsthand being delivered. Proceeding with this project will not be for the faint-hearted. So let's go into this fully informed and with a clear understanding of what it will take to pull off this monumental effort as we have charged the authority with accomplishing. Mr. Linder, if you have any opening comments, I'd welcome them at this time.
Sure, thank you. I would like to thank the chair for providing both the members of this committee as well as the public the opportunity to have their input on the authority's draft business plan. We in the legislature are critical funding partners with the authority. It's our duty here to take on an active role in overseeing the prudent expenditure of public funds. Our task here today is to identify any risks on the horizon and search for ways to possibly mitigate these risks. So I'd like to thank my colleagues for showing up today. I look forward to hearing from the project's experts and engaging in a constructive discussion about this new business plan. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Linder. Mr. Gray, would you like to make some comments before we proceed?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I look forward to the discussion. Certainly, the new business plan before us represents a dramatic shift in the high-speed rail plans for the Central Valley and the northern San Joaquin Valley in particular. I look forward to the opportunity today to discuss those changes and understand better how we move forward from here. Thank you for including the members of the Select Committee on Rail, and I look forward to the discussion.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gray. So at this time, I would like to ask the panel members to come forward. We'll hear from each of them, and then I'm going to ask them all to stay at the table when we get through with the presentations. I'd like to have all of you available for a roundtable discussion following our brief presentations. And members, let's try to hold off on our questions until we get through the presentations so that we can actually, please write your questions down. We'll be able to give it plenty of time and consideration, but let's get through that portion. because I do suspect all of you are going to want to speak and ask some comments, but when we do, please be succinct. And for the public, there will be ample time to hear from you following the panel discussion. You will have time at the mic, and please know that I will not leave this hearing until everybody's had an opportunity to present their opinion or statements. So, and to that extent, you can all help us focus on the specific items we'll be discussing today, and that would be appreciated from the members of the committee. So with that, we will begin our hearing going forward with the panel. And what we'll do is we'll start off with Mr. Dan Richard. He's the chair of Board of Directors of California High-Speed Rail Authority. And Mr. Richard, thank you so much for joining our oversight hearing today.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Mr. Chairman and members, I am Dan Richard. I am the chair of the Board of Directors of the High-Speed Rail Authority. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to thank you first for your opening remarks, because I think you framed this issue very well. And also, Vice Chair Linder made the point that the legislature is an important funding partner here. And I want to just start by saying that we believe that the only way that we can have the confidence of the public is if the public's elected representatives are fully engaged in reviewing this program. And so we understand, respect, and welcome the legislature's oversight role for this program, and we will continue to endeavor to be as forthcoming as possible about the issues that you framed, about the risks and the challenges of the program. I also want to say at the outset that I believe that the staff background paper that was prepared for the committee, as well as the material, the report of the Legislative Analyst's Office, and the report of the peer review group, all together do a very thorough and comprehensive job in identifying those risks and laying them out in a dispassionate and clear fashion. And while we may not agree with every single statement or even recommendation in some of those, I think they were done both professionally and in an intellectually honest way that has informed this committee very well. My colleague, Mr. Morales, who is the Chief Executive Officer of the authority, is going to go into some more details, and of course we'll engage in the colloquy with you and answer your questions. But very briefly, I just want to talk about some of the drivers behind this business plan. As you noted, Mr. Chairman, this is a highly ambitious project. I will tell you that the board, which is comprised of representatives appointed by the governor as well as by this body, is very engaged in and very cognizant of those risks. And at the board level, what we're trying to do is to manage the project by identifying, managing, and mitigating those risks. And one of the things that I appreciated most about the background papers is that there is a difference between something being a risk and something actually happening. And so the earlier in the process that we can lay out for you and the public what we see as the financial and the operational and other risks associated with this project, the more we can have our arms around those and the greater confidence I think we can instill in people. Because I will tell you that the endeavor here is one of solving problems. And there's no way to build a project of this magnitude without approaching it from the attitude that there are going to be things that start to go wrong. There are going to be things that are unexpected. And our task, as we see it, is to address those and to manage those as quickly and completely as possible. Turning to this business plan itself, the chairman noted, and it's been widely understood in the press, as was described earlier, that we have embarked in a new direction on this plan, not just geographically, but I think a different direction in terms of the program. One of the things that's challenging about this program, and again, it's been presented to you, is the number of constraints that limit our range of action, our freedom of action for the program. And they're not just the financial constraints and limitations, but in fact, the legislature in its wisdom and the people in theirs enacted AB 3034 and Proposition 1A, which had a very distinct set of requirements. And I believe that while those may be challenging for us, that we understand and respect that the impetus for those was that the people were saying, if we're going to spend $9 billion of our money to initiate this high-speed rail system, we want to make sure that it's truly high-speed rail. We don't want to have something that is a one-off imitation. We want it to be fast. We want it to be clean. We want it to be able to say that it's designed to achieve these transit times so that we know that the people of California at the end of the day are being delivered a project that is similar to high-speed rail systems around the world. And this is something that we keep in mind every single day. In fact, one of the things that I think is important is that unfortunately, a lot of times people say, well, this isn't what the public voted for. We are delivering to the public what the public voted for. And that allows me to turn to the next point, which is that one of the things this business plan does, and I should indicate it's a draft business plan for public review and the review and input by this legislative body. But one of the principles that underlies this really is a continuation of something that came about in 2012. When Governor Brown articulated his support for this program, when some of us were appointed to our respective positions, I think the big change goes to something that you mentioned, Mr. Chairman, which is that this isn't just about high-speed rail and a fast train. In 2012, this legislature passed SB 1029, which was a broad-based rail modernization program for the entire state. And it went way beyond high-speed rail. It appropriated funds, including our bond funds, for regional partnerships that I'm proud to say we had forged and that we are trying to reinvigorate and keep strong. It recognized that in some areas, in the densest urban areas, that the wisest course was to share alignments where it was already possible if we could do that and still meet the bond provisions. And so that was a hallmark of this program, and it continues to be a hallmark of this program, that high-speed rail is simply the spinal part of a broader commitment on the part of California to have regional rail modernization and a statewide rail modernization program. And that is embedded in this. I will just say quickly, Mr. Morales is going to go into more detail, and I don't want to take up too much time, but let me say it as directly as I can. Our charge was not to deliver to you a politically correct business plan. It was to deliver a correct business plan. And looking at the constraints that we have with respect to funding, with respect to our contractual commitments with the federal partners, with respect to the limitations in the Bond Act, with respect to the need to expend federal dollars by the 2017 deadline, we stepped back and we asked ourselves, how can we most quickly get an operating leg of high-speed rail up and running that will meet the provisions of the Bond Act, be able to operate without a subsidy, connect important regions of the state, and unlock private sector dollars that will help us build the rest of the system? And I want to reiterate, Mr. Chairman, to you and to the members of this committee, to the legislature and the public, this draft business plan is simply about sequencing. No part of the state will be left behind. We wake up every day knowing that what we're building is what the public wanted, a high-speed rail system that will connect San Francisco through the Central Valley to Los Angeles and Anaheim, and eventually to connect to San Diego and up to Sacramento. And we are not in any way walking away from or backing off of that commitment. This draft business plan represents our best thinking about the most efficient and feasible way to accomplish that objective in sequence. And so what we're really talking about is which sequence comes first. With the dollars available to us from the federal source, the state bond monies, as well as the allocation of cap and trade monies that this legislature has provided us, we looked at this and said that we cannot reach Los Angeles with those available funds at this time. We'll need to unlock the private sector dollars to do that. But we can make a very important connection between the Central Valley and the Silicon Valley. And I will just close with this. Mr. Chairman, you laid out the challenges and how hard this is. But I will tell you that as we put this draft business plan together, I think our primary emotion was one of enthusiasm. Because for the first time, we can look at you and say not just well, we're taking this step and this step and this step, but that we can take a big step to accomplishing this program with the resources that we believe are available to us. And that was something that has given us great optimism. This is a hard program, but Californians have done hard things in the past, and we will continue to work as diligently as we can to make this happen. I look forward to answering your questions. I wanted to provide that overall framework, and Mr. Morales is going to get into the details. And thank you again for the honor of testifying today.
Thank you, Mr. Richard. So we'll move on to Mr. Jeff Morales. He's the Executive Director, as mentioned, of the California High-Speed Rail Authority. Mr. Morales, thank you for coming today.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. And Mr. Chairman, thank you for coming down and visiting the site. I think it's important to see it firsthand and get a sense that this is really happening, and we are moving forward. I'll echo something that Chairman Richard said, which is I think the staff memo did an excellent job of summarizing the plan. So I'm not going to repeat everything in there. What I'd like to do is focus on the context for the plan and then some of the key elements in it, and then obviously we can respond to any questions. But I think the most important element of context is something that the staff identified, which is that this is the first fiscally constrained plan that the authority or anyone in the state has been able to put together to deliver this program. And that's because of the commitment by this legislature in 2014 to provide cap-and-trade funds on an ongoing basis to the program. Now, in moving forward with a fiscally constrained approach, we can only program and plan elements that we can fund with reasonably foreseeable available dollars and sources. That is, we can only plan on expending the dollars that have been made available to the program. And those are primarily three sources: the Proposition 1A funds approved by the voters, federal funds appropriated in 2009 and 2010, and now the cap-and-trade proceeds, which began in 2014. The other key constraints, of course, guiding the program are those within Proposition 1A, and it's already been noted by the chair, one key one being the restriction on operating any segment that requires a subsidy. So even if we had a fully functional segment, until we have a long enough segment to become self-sustaining, we can't put that segment into operation. So that restricts our planning. Working within the constraints, this plan focuses on three goals. The first is to get into operations as quickly as possible, and that's in order to start delivering the benefits of this system to the people in terms of being able to get people out of cars and planes and onto non-polluting trains. It also frees up the private sector participation that Chairman Richard noted. The second key principle is to make as many concurrent investments around the state as we can, so that we see interim benefits happening for people around the state, and that we can tie then the system together more efficiently and quickly over time. And then the third is to be prepared to move additional segments into construction, ultimately by completing the environmental approvals necessary for those. And what you see in the draft business plan in terms of proposed decisions are a reflection of those criteria. They were decided by looking at the constraints and the criteria. So let me talk a little bit more detail about those. The first, getting into revenue operations. The question here was how and where we could initiate operations. And I stress initiate because it's not an endpoint. As Chairman said, it's a sequencing issue. It's about how we can first get into operations and then continue to expand the system. The combination of available funding, updated capital costs, the 1A restrictions, ridership, revenue forecast, all of those things lead us to the conclusion that where that initiation can take place, the first service we can start running is from the southern terminus of our current construction contracts in the Central Valley in Kern County up to San Jose, connecting Central Valley to Silicon Valley. In year of expenditure dollars, we project out that cost to be $20.7 billion, which is within the projected funds available to us from existing sources. The environmental approvals are underway for all of the segments that are beyond those that have already been cleared in the Central Valley to get this underway. We anticipate construction completion in 2024 and revenue service to begin in 2025. The draft plan also describes the business model for moving this program forward, how we would deliver it in our procurement strategies. That would be a series of large design-build procurements to complete the civil works. a large P3 for the procurement of the rail infrastructure, communications, signaling, all of those things, procurement of rolling stock and associated facilities, and very importantly, bringing an operator on board early to help guide those decisions so that we can make good informed decisions from the perspective of the entity that would ultimately be operating the system. The second leg is to make the concurrent investments, and there at the same time as we would be proceeding with the valley-to-valley piece, we would continue to partner with Caltrain, and you'll hear from Jim Hartnett about that on the peninsula to electrify Caltrain. Continue to work with our partners at ACE and the Capital Corridor Joint Powers Authority to look at improving service elsewhere in Northern California. And then, of course, working with CalSTA and working with our regional partners to make improvements in the Burbank to Anaheim corridor. And I want to just quickly talk about why we are focused on that corridor. Burbank to Anaheim is a 45-mile existing corridor that connects key destinations in Southern California and provides connectivity to other transit services throughout the region. Improvements in rail are really essential given the air quality issues, traffic issues, and the population there. That corridor houses existing rail service, including the second busiest Amtrak corridor in the country, as well as extensive Metrolink service, and very key freight lines throughout Southern California. And there are significant short-term opportunities for major improvements in that corridor that we can make with our partners that would benefit passenger, freight, and auto traffic. As an example, the Rosecrans-Marquardt grade separation project, which we are working with our partners to advance. That would complete the triple tracking for the freight lines through there, a huge efficiency gain for freight. It would eliminate one of the PUC's highest priority grade crossings from a safety perspective in the state. And it would increase capacity on Metrolink's Inland Empire line by 60%, dramatically improve service throughout the region, including to Riverside and San Bernardino. These improvements can be made incrementally and can all be accomplished by staying almost entirely within the existing right-of-way with very little impact beyond, and they would benefit the existing communities there while we continue to build out, and they would become the building blocks eventually for high-speed rail getting there. We're working with SCAG and the partner agencies there, consistent with the 2012 MOU that we entered into, to identify the projects that would help, that would be components of this corridor, and to move those forward. Our goal is to leverage resources, work together to secure new funding and advance those improvements as quickly as we can. The last element is to prepare for the next steps, and there again is to have the entire statewide system ready to advance into construction by completing environmental work. Our target is to have all of that done by the end of 2017. This would allow us to adapt to changing circumstances and move the various segments forward as we advance to tie the whole system together. And the plan identifies the funds necessary to complete all of that environmental work so that we're positioned to do it. In closing, I'll just again note this: it is a draft plan. We released it on February 18th for public comment. There's a 60-day public comment period. We have a hearing coming up, a board meeting coming up in Anaheim on the 12th, where we'll take public comment and where the board will take public comment, and then on April 21st in San Jose to take comment and approve a plan. And we will submit it then to the legislature by the May 1 deadline. So with that, thank you, and I'll turn to Mr. Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. Morales. And Mr. Kelly, thank you very much for coming in your busy schedule to join us on this hearing. So please proceed.